What is going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q from Retro Q Game back at it again. And here we are. Here we are, coming at you from an isolated location where you don't get no invitation because, well, everyone else can get sick and die of their zombie virus outside. I'm staying safe in here. Now, we'll get on to our 52nd, our first ever of the new year, if you will, of these episodes. Now, I say new year because, of course, this is the first one after the 1 year anniversary when I started. It's obviously not the brand new year. Happened a few months ago. But anyway, let's get going. But before we do, I do want to mention this next gen talk is really, it's been from the fanboys and the media outlets, it's been really wearing me down for a while now. I've said this months ago, predicted it a long time ago, hell, as early as some point last year, but fuck it, we'll talk about it anyway, because that's what we got to talk about first. So, we'll start off with our Xbox Series X hardware related news. Now, this one is something I touched on briefly in a different video earlier on this week, but I do want to bring it up again here where it gets its own little dedicated section, even if this is just going to be a fairly small one. But we're going to look at audio and audio connections and audio ports, or lack of which. So, the Xbox will not have an optical Toslink digital output port. So basically, there's no optical audio out. That's the quick way of saying it now. Now, I think this is very, very strange, considering that this is still the preferred method and gold standard for digital audio output. The removal of this is very, very disappointing, especially because the Xbox 360, depending on the cable you had, and then later, depending on the model of the 360 you had, you would even have that. All versions of the Xbox One had it, the PS2 had it. Granted, the PS2's was surround sound for films, but it used Dolby Pro Logic for games. And then, of course, the PS3 had it, the PS4 had it, and we're assuming the PS5 had it. Nintendo don't have it because they're Nintendo and they don't do surround sound. They just Pro Logic everything, and it's a bit of a mess. Although, I guess, in a way, certain things do have it over HDMI. But regardless, anyway, it's still the de facto gold standard, especially in the individual hardware components section. Because digital optical audio is for the win, basically. Now, since the Xbox will not have an optical audio output, despite it being on earlier editions and earlier I suppose you can't call them revisions, but pre-revised versions of the unit. Like, for example, that one that everyone saw the ports on the back, there was an optical connection on there. But yes, it has since been removed, and this is official going forward for the proper full launch. Now, this means that all the surround sound is going to be carried over HDMI only. Now, this might not be a problem for some people, but many people, myself included, prefer to stay away from any receiver or amplifier or anything like that for HDMI audio. Now, the reason for this is we would like to stay away from the risk and possibility of any additional steps, including pass-through and whatnot, or extra processing and all that, that can introduce additional delay and additional lag onto the video signal because it's all coming through HDMI. So, the big problem here is, let me give you an example of how a setup like this would work. For example, my Xbox One X right now, I have the HDMI cable going straight to my monitor, and I have the optical cable going straight to my surround sound. It's pretty simple, right? So that way, I have it set so that the sound comes out through the digital output with the surround, not the surround sound, well, yes, technically the surround sound, through the optical cable to my speakers. Now, what you would need in a situation with the Xbox Series X, you will have to have like a big amplifier or a big receiver or something that has all the HDMI inputs, like they all do, of course, because, well, you're going to need them for that. But it will transfer the audio and video to that, and then it will, in turn, an additional step, pass the video signal to your screen. Now, like I mentioned, this can be a bit of a problem because some amplifiers, some receivers, and all that stuff will introduce a little extra input lag. So there can be problems with that. That's why we prefer to just go audio source straight to the audio, video source straight to the video. Makes perfect sense. Now, of course, this does not surprise me in certain ways because while the Xbox 360 had a fantastic launch for its audio support and whatnot, however, the Xbox One was not the case. The Xbox One audio setup at launch was an absolute mess too, you might remember. Didn't have Dolby Digital 5.1 for games, and that's kind of the biggest important thing. The games didn't support DTS, and it didn't have Dolby Digital, the world's gold standard 5.1 most common industry standard support at launch. It was patched in a little bit later. Think about that. It didn't have the world's most versatile, the world's most used, the world's most common and popular gold standard of surround sound digital audio at launch for a box that was supposed to be your all-in-one to replace your Blu-ray player, your DVD player, your TV box, and your games console, and it couldn't do that audio properly. Yikes. Now, hopefully the PS5 doesn't follow this as well, because we all know they're touting their 3D audio gimmick, but they haven't really talked about it too much just yet, or at least real world aspects of it and applications, rather than just waveforms and processes and all this crap. I mean, Mark Cerny's ASMR deep dives aside, but no one really pays attention to too much of that. But hopefully, like I said, Sony won't go with this with the PS5. Hopefully they will have an optical audio output as well as the option, I guess, for HDMI. Now, this disappoints me, like I said, because of the extra step and amplifier and all. I do plan on buying and replacing my surround sound setup next year anyway. So I will likely be getting something with the likes of, DTS Master Audio, Dolby Digital Master Audio, Dolby Atmos support and all as well. And probably most of them will be over HDMI. However, I would prefer not to. A good amplifier will have all types of inputs for audio. It will have HDMI for audio and video. It will have optical ports for just audio. It will even have coaxial digital ports for the same thing. Audio. That's it. So, hopefully, at least anyway, with the PS5, I can still use the optical output into that, and then I can use the HDMI for this Xbox because of this awful idea of them removing it for some reason. So, moving away from questionable hardware design choices to questionable business practices and whatnot. And of course, naturally, when we're talking questionable business practices, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, fairly near the top of the list anyway. We're looking at Gearbox and Randy Pitchford. All thanks to Borderlands 3. Now, Borderlands 3. So, what are we talking about here anyway? Well, it has been reported that there are significantly smaller performance bonuses than originally expected and originally touted for the staff members and all there too. Now this is complete vintage Randy Pitchford because he is a scam artist magician and he is complete smoke and mirrors like they do here. So Gearbox actually pays below industry standard wages for their developers and their artists and all that stuff as well. Now what they do to offset this, and they even use this as an incentive when recruiting people and trying to get people in, they offer profit sharing when it comes to whatever they put out. So naturally, you get a bit of a profit, a cut of the game and all too, from their overall lifetime sales. Now, this comes after this profit sharing percentage and all. This only starts and takes effect after the publisher costs are recouped. So obviously the publisher, in this case 2K or Take-Two at the top end, depending on how far you want to go, they pay for the developer wages, they pay for the rent, the PR, the marketing, etc., etc., etc. Now, it's said that Borderlands 3 has cost around $96 million for the base game alone to develop, plus an additional almost $50 million for the DLC. So the total is somewhere around the $140 million mark for the entire development, PR, etc., etc., etc. Now, Borderlands 2, which is what Randy Pitchford and Gearbox and Take-Two and all, they were the ones using Borderlands 2 as the incentive. Obviously, everyone knows how great Borderlands 2 is of a game and how many copies it went on and sold, and well, it basically I won't say created the genre, but it's the gold standard that everyone still reaches for and fails to achieve when copying co-op looter shooter games, thanks to Borderlands, because of it's just so damn good. Now, naturally, they used those numbers, the sales, the bonuses that were given at the time and all as well, to hype everyone up for Borderlands 3. Hype all the developers, recruit more, get them to work harder and all. Because naturally, if you think, okay, when this game ships, I'm going to get a 6-figure bonus, you're going to fucking work harder. You're going to put in those long hours. You're going to do all that stuff. Because historically, what they've said is Borderlands 2 has allowed people to outright fully buy homes with their bonus checks from Borderlands 2. So, yeah. But because of the size of Borderlands 3 and the hype and the scale and the scope and whatnot, it was expected that Borderlands 3 was going to be bigger and better every way, especially when it comes to their bonus checks. However, what they didn't disclose, what was kind of hidden away and whatnot too, is with a bigger studio team at Gearbox, now 2 studios, not just the original one that was working on Borderlands 2 at the time, and there's even some shady, dodgy Randy Pitchford shit. And yeah, that because of all of the above, well, the checks were significantly lower than people were expecting. Especially since it was disclosed a few years ago in a previous lawsuit against Randy Pitchford that he purposely shrank down this fund a day or two after touting it as saying, yeah, we're doing profit sharing, this, that, and the other, and then the next day completely shrank it down. So money was removed and all from it. It was shrank down. And what's even more dodgy from the whole situation is that Randy Pitchford negotiated a big advance bonus for himself from Take-Two and Gearbox. Now, typically, you would think that would be his part of the bonus, his part of the royalty checks or whatever it is. No. This was taken from the publisher's percentage, which has been alluded to being 60% for Take-Two, or 2K Take-Two, it's the same thing. We'll just call it Take-Two. So 60% for them, and then 40% for the studio, once the initial costs were recouped. But Randy Pitchford's several $million bonus was taken from the publisher's 60%. So on top of all of that, he would still get all his profit shares out of there too. So this is extremely dodgy. 100% does not surprise me. Why? Because Gearbox and Randy Pitchford have proved years and years and years at this point that they are scam artists. Sure, they make one good series, everything else they make is a joke, and they're just massive scam artists at this point. Clearly, we've seen all the evidence to say this. And now I'll say one extra thing as well. While you may be used to a bigger bonus, or a huge bonus based on your previous track record and whatnot as well, relying on a bonus is not a good deal. Because that could be a huge bonus. You could buy a house straight out of it. However, you could also get completely screwed and make next to nothing from it. So yeah, I understand what they're doing. They're paying less than the wages, and then they're giving the profit sharing side of it. It can work in either way, but I think taking a job to rely on bonuses to not only put you above what you should earn, but bring you to what you should earn, let alone exceed it, is a bad idea, if you ask me. But speaking of bad ideas, we're going to talk about cloud streaming. That's right, game streaming yet again. It's apparently all the rage nowadays with Google Stadia, and Bethesda have their own one, Project X Cloud, Sony's crappy PS Now. But, yes, quick reminder that they are all terrible and all need to go away as soon as possible. However, not only will we probably not see them go away forever just yet, but we're going to see their numbers increase for the moment. Because Amazon, who we all know has been talking about putting a game streaming service together, supposedly wants to launch early release, early access, whatever it is. They want to launch their one, which is currently codenamed Project Tempo, this year in 2020. Now, with all the lockdowns and quarantines and coronavirus stuff and all that as well, and affecting everyone who's been involved in it, it may potentially happen that it slides to 2021 for its early access launch. But let's be optimistic, okay? I'm going to be optimistic about this. So let's hope it doesn't get delayed to 2021. Let's hope it gets delayed indefinitely and never launches, because these systems are such an absolute joke. They need to stop. It's a waste of money. It's a terrible experience. And they all want this just for profit and control. Absolutely laughable. Absolutely laughable. I can't wait till this whole fad, this side of technology fails and flops. There are many different aspects of technology that I love to see fail and flop and just fade into obscurity and basically never exist again. One of these is 3D. So thankfully that's pretty much on the way out. So eventually it will be gone completely, but it's almost completely gone, thankfully. Hopefully cloud streaming goes next. It failed a few times before. We're just waiting on these ones to fall flat on their face. Now this next topic I hate to talk about because, well, almost every rumor you see on the internet, despite it being reported on many different websites, it just goes nowhere because there's no source and no basis for it whatsoever. It's just someone randomly posting one thing and then, well, people semi-make them famous out of it. Now, but because of that and the size and potential gravity of what this could be and what it could mean, I'm going to talk about it anyway. So it's alleged, supported or unsupported rumors, unsubstantiated claims that Nintendo are looking to remaster several of their mainline Mario games and bring them to the Switch. Now, from what the reports say, you're looking at stuff like Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, Mario 3D World. So, yeah, it's their big name games. Obviously, it wouldn't include stuff like the Super Nintendo games. They're 16-bit side-scrolling. It's the same with the 8-bit ones on the NES. But I'm in two minds about this whole situation for a couple of different reasons. Nintendo have almost never remastered Mario games. They've remastered Zelda. They've probably remastered one or two other things that I can't think of, but they haven't remastered Metroid anyway. That's one thing. But again, they almost never remastered their Mario games. They've done one or two cases of it. Same with one or two Donkey Kong games. But again, Mario, their flagship franchise, has practically no record of it being done. At least not in the 3D games anyway. So that's one way of looking at it. But the Switch doesn't get new games and is nothing but a first party and late port machine. So, you know, I could see them kind of doing it. After all, the Wii got massive amounts of shovelware. The Wii 2, aka the Switch. I should call it the Switch, actually. Put two I's in there, the Switch. That reminds me of the Belgium. That's it. You heat the Canadian. You played the Switch. You ported the games to the Switch. There you go. It makes so much sense now. I was trying to think of what was in my mind there. But anyway, back to what we're talking about here. So with these games, the likes of Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and Mario 3D World, it makes you wonder, would they create a whole new proprietary engine, or would they port it into the Super Mario Odyssey engine? Which would probably be pretty damn good if they ported it into that engine. Maybe refined it a little bit better because, well, playing 900p games, even on a 1080p monitor, is a bad time. But it could potentially be done. Now, I would love this, honestly. If they remastered Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, or hell, I suppose, I guess you'd almost have to remake Mario 64 at this point. But yeah, remake, remaster, whatever the fuck it is. To these games, these are great games. No matter what you think. Mario 64 is fantastic. Mario Sunshine is a hell of a lot of fun. I just replayed it about 2 years ago. Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. I played the shit out of 1 back on the Wii. I don't think I ever played 2. Mario 3D World was relatively fun, but it was probably the weakest 3D Mario game. Now, like I said, I would love all this to get it on there as well. Pretty much the only stuff worth owning on Nintendo platforms is its first party stuff. This is a great example of all of that. Now, the big question is, How are they going to do this if they do decide to do this? Are they going to sell them individually as almost or at full price games, in which case they can fuck right off? Or will they sell it as some type of anniversary collection, anniversary bundle, or something like that? They've done stuff like that in the past. There's a Super Mario All Stars anniversary collection on the Wii, of all places. So yeah, they could potentially do that. Bring the whole collection up for, I don't know, 65, 70 euro, something like that. That would be okay if they did that, because realistically, you're getting Mario 64, you're getting Mario Sunshine, you're getting Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and you're getting Mario 3D World. My god, I'm fucking translucent. But yeah, you'd be getting 5 top quality games remastered for, the modern era and the modern platforms and all as well. Now, to go along with this, which is somewhat ever so slightly less interesting than the mainline Mario series, but there's also talk of Paper Mario as well, not only being remasters of the old games, but a new game, which would be going more back to the original style roots of some of the old ones, like, say, the GameCube and the Wii. Which is really good, because the later games, well, I guess, yeah, if you can even call them that, because it depends on who you ask for and all, stuff like Mario's Paper Jam and all that stuff, are meh at best. And they're not really Paper Mario games, so I don't count them as Paper Mario games anyway. The original two is where it's at. So all of this is allegedly going to happen in 2020, at least all the remasters and all. Maybe the new one is, if new Super Paper Mario or whatever does decide to be a real game, who knows when that's going to come out. But if all of these remasters for Mario 64, Sunshine, Galaxy 1 and 2, 3D World, and what is it, Paper Mario 1000 Year Door, and I forget what the other one is. Jesus, that's not a good thing to forget. But yeah, all of these are allegedly going to be in 2020, which would be somewhat interesting. We'd have to wait and see. There's obviously maybe Nintendo Directs months and months apart. The replacement, what do they call it, digital presentation for E3? That could have something, because that's usually when they get their big games and stuff in there. But anyway, until then, we'll wait and see. But speaking of wait and see, we have another company that's taking a wait and see attitude in a negative way for a lot of people. We're looking at a company called Game. Now, Game is the UK's main retailer chain of, well, as the name suggests, games. They don't really have GameStop and all over there, so this is the equivalent of theirs. It's not owned by the same company, but it's their version of it, if you will. Now, of course, because of all the coronavirus and the lockdowns and stuff and whatnot, Game was forced to close all 247 stores on March 24th due to the government imposed lockdowns and all as well. Now, interestingly enough, something that is not and should actually be more common in the whole thing, they're continuing to pay all staff wages up until the end of April. So if you work there, you'd be getting about 5 weeks of pay all the way up until the end of April. Now, this is kind of weird and kind of strange, and I'm not 100% sure how it would work in this situation, but surprisingly, what they're going to pay you is based on average income, not contracted hours. I'm not sure what that's based off and who gets to say on that, but it is a little bit weird anyway. But anyway, back to the point here. The big problem and the big reason we're talking about this is it's great that they're paying their staff for these 5 weeks. However, not everyone might have a job to go back to at the end of April, or longer, depending on what happens and when they open back up and all as well. So, if stores haven't opened back up, or even if they have opened back up, but they don't need as much staffing as the business is down and there's less customers in the store, and, well, I mean, if it's a quiet day, I'm sure you can get a lot done with just 2 people or something like that. They may have to let people go, which is a big problem again within itself. Now, the people that do keep their jobs beyond April will be paid 80% of their wages up to a cap of £2,500 per month, which is a lot of money. That's a lot of money per month. If at least in English pounds, that is definitely a lot of money. So I mean, that's like executive level stuff nearly. That's like area manager level stuff. So maybe even I don't know their exact pay situation, but maybe even higher up in that to earn that kind of money over there, because it is pounds and all too. So this is all with the whole 80% thing and the cap and all that too. It's incentivizing game to keep more staff because they can technically pay them a little bit less, and they're helped out by the government because the government has what's called a coronavirus job retention scheme to help keep people employed when they may not exactly be needed during the aftermath of all of this anyway. Now, it's a bad time for games retailers overall because no matter where you look at it and all too, well, games retail, physical retail, at least, ugh, I'm getting tired talking about these. But yeah, games retail, physical retail, and all as well. It's consistently down year on year on year. Companies are going out of business. They're having more and more sales. They're dropping prices to get smaller margins just to make sales. Online is killing, and digital sales are absolutely slaughtering them at this point. It's a bad time to be in what I suppose you call it games retail. Between game, depending on where you live, GameStop, EB Games, something like that. They're becoming more and more irrelevant every day. And what does that tell you about not only digital distribution, but how the, I won't call it retail environment has gone, but just how online purchasing and online sales, stuff like Amazon and stuff, has really taken over. If even big like it's one thing for Amazon to put a mom and pop shop out, but it's another different story and completely entirely if they're putting significant damage into like Walmart's business, into Best Buy's game, like, well, Walmart's game business, Best Buy's game business, or in this case when they're completely raffle stomping GameStop or Game, depending on where you live in the world. It's interesting times. Interesting times. But that brings us to our most important segment that we love to do and we love to talk about every single week. Q, what's the deal? What's going on with you? What's up? What's going down? What's the 411? What are you playing? Well, the last week has been a very eventful one in many different ways for me. I played through, yet again, one of my bajillion playthroughs at this point, The Last of Us Remastered and its Left Behind DLC. This was supposed to be my primer for The Last of Us Part 2, which was scheduled to launch on May 29th of 2020 on PS4, which would have been very, very nice. Of course, what happens the day after I start The Last of Us Redemption Run or Final Playthrough, Pinnacle Playthrough, there you go. My Last of Us Remastered PS4 Pro Pinnacle Playthrough, previous to Part 2. There we go. That's how we do. We love alliteration up in this bitch. But, yeah, the day after I started, of course, Last of Us Part 2 gets gets delayed indefinitely. I was going to say delayed indefinitely. Yeah, there you go. That's it. So delayed indefinitely. Can't alliterate now, can I? Jesus. So it is nice, though, I will say. I managed to pick up a couple of the straggler trophies that I had problems with. I say had problems with. There's one that's notably at least anyway. Well, I can't talk at the end of this one today. There's one trophy in the main game that is notably glitchy the entire time, and that is the one for the optional conversations. I finally managed to get through it, and I had to reload a couple of times now, but I finally got around to doing it. Give you a perfect example, I used a specific video on The Last of Us back on the PS3 in order to get this one, and I used the exact same video in the PS4 version when I was first doing that back in, I don't know, 2015 or something, when I went back to get all the trophies and all that too. And it's just been glitchy and all ever since. Many people have the same problems, but I finally got around to doing it. And then when I was doing the DLC, I picked up the last couple of straggler achievements. Straggler achievements, trophies, whatever you want to call them, in the DLC as well. So basically, I don't have any of the multiplayer ones, and I'm missing one or two of the new game plus higher difficulty ones because I don't feel like going through it on grounded and then going through it again on new game plus grounded. I just can't be bothered. But yeah, it's good. It's good. I always enjoy it, and it's nice to finally have those out of there. I have deleted the game off my PS4, which basically the end of an era. Now the reason I say that is because when I did say it was my final PS4 Pro playthrough, pinnacle playthrough, previous and prior to part two. Yeah, we throw extra words in there too. But that's mainly because I will probably end up playing it on PS5. I'm not going to say I'm never going to play it again, but yeah, I'll probably go back and play it on PS5 because backwards compatibility and all too. But yeah, it's the final PS4 hardware side of it anyway. But on top of that, we've also had the release of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, I finished that last night. Took me just under 5 hours. So, I've I have some thoughts on that, and I do want to talk about it. Now, the game has been kind of savaged by many people and many outlets, and I want to say I don't want to say they're right and they're wrong, but I disagree with some of the stuff. So basically, they're wrong. Let's put it that way. For a great example is that Resident Evil 3 Remake is not as good as the Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, there's several reasons for this. Not only because fundamentally, as the base game, Resident Evil 2 is a better game than Resident Evil 3, even compared to the original PS1 games. Resident Evil 2 is better than Resident Evil 3, so yeah, it makes more sense that way. There are almost different styles of games as well. Resident Evil 3 and the 3 Remake are far more action-oriented than the likes of Resident Evil 2 and 2 Remake, which were a lot more survival horror. But you can tell that because of how Resident Evil 2 was shaping up down the line, late in its development cycle, that they eventually just greenlit and kind of rushed out and pared back and went light on some of the mechanics and just some of the quality in general for the Resident Evil 3 remake, just to get it out basically a year later. And it kind of shows. It's not bad overall, and it's not bad by any means. It's good. There are still a couple of complaints. It definitely feels very short. I do have a hard time recommending someone buy this full price brand new. Maybe wait for a sale if you're not super hyped about it, but you're curious, if you will. But anyway, yeah, it's a decent enough game. 7 out of 10. Joke there. It's a decent game, but take for that as you will anyway. But other than that, it's just been Animal Crossing all day, every day. I spent like 400,000 bells this morning on turnips. So I'm waiting for a good time to sell them later this week. Maybe hit a nice 50, 60, 70, 80% profit on my massive investment. Pay off a house, pay off part of another house, pay off a bridge or some steps or stairs or whatever it is. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how much I can what's the word I'm gonna drag in from that. And then of course on the flip side, every morning I wake up and I turn the game on and I just think, oh my fucking god, this bunny day event needs to stop. Can the 12th please come quickly, because it's getting rough. It's getting rough, really is. I think I have all the when you meet Zippy, the bunny, for all that, he tells you that if you find all the Easter recipes and craft all the Easter recipes by the 12th, you will get a special reward on the 12th. I believe I have all of them. I have 37 Easter ones and they're all crafted at the moment, so I'm hoping I'll get something out of it. But when you're digging, you're chopping, you're mining, you're fishing, whatever it is, and it's just egg after egg after egg after egg, it gets really, really tiresome and really, really tedious. Luckily, there's still a decent amount of stuff to do anyway, and yeah, it's going to be good. I am expecting Final Fantasy VII Remake at some point this week too, prior to launch, of course. And I said that last week as well, but and technically I think the week earlier. But yeah, we know that the copies are being shipped early and all too. I'm just hopefully waiting on mine to arrive as early as possible. Basically, the only main thing I have going on at the moment is Animal Crossing. I might play through some other game in the meantime, but I do want to kind of have my options available if Final Fantasy does arrive, and I just move straight over to that. focus on that as my one big main game, because that's going to keep me going. That's going to keep me going, especially because what really wants me, what I want, and what really makes me want that game as early as possible, because not only does it look really, really good, officially that game is out on the 10th, which is this coming Friday. Our lockdown, our government sanctioned lockdown, and technically I am locked down off work until the 14th. Yeah. So it's not like I'm going to play it hard over the week. Well, I will be playing it hard over the weekend if I do get it on the Friday. But it's not like I'm going to finish it by playing it hard over the weekend. So I would love maybe another week off. You know, that could work out for me. On top of all that, I will mention that since we are coming up to this is a non-gaming related bit, but since we are coming up to the end of our lockdown in just over a week from now, it was actually on the radio this morning that the government are considering the ramifications and the economic aspects and all, and just kind of the personal safety aspects and everything of extending the lockdown. They want to extend it to September. It's a pretty big one, though. So, considering that it started in, we'll just call it mid-March. That's mid-April, which is where it's going to. May, June, July, August, September. Imagine that. Imagine nearly 6 months of being pretty much locked down. I would fucking love it, because I still get paid for it. But I would fucking love it. I would have all this time to play all these games. This massive backlog that I do have. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I've been taking advantage of that the last couple, well, not just the last couple of weeks, but this year I've been marking games off. I've, finished Grandia, finished Wild Arms, finished Grandia 2. There's a couple of other games in there as well. I finished new games too, and Doom 64 is probably going to be the next one. So, yeah, that's it. I will say as well, before we round out, be sure to check out my nice little 4K 60 FPS test footage unboxing of the Persona 5 Royal Phantom Thieves edition that just went up as well earlier today. But in the meantime, let me know in the comment section below any thoughts, feelings, comments, opinions, butthurt, salt, whatever it is, praise, admonishment for anything we talked about here today, because, well, you guys stuck with it all, so why wouldn't you? Boom. Anyway, in the meantime, hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell. Granted, getting a notification from YouTube in current year about a new video upload or a live stream, or when one of these beautiful little podcast episodes goes up every weekend, well, that's a whole other story, but at least you can say you tried, am I right? So, thank you all so much for watching, as always, and remember, winners don't play switch ports.